Hello and welcome back to the Digital Marketing Podcast. My name is Kieran Rogers.
I'm Louise Crossley.
And I'm Daniel Rolls.
And today we're talking about email deliverability.
Okay, so this has become a bigger and bigger issue as there have been more and more spam out there, as we all kind of know. We're getting bombarded with email. And we've kind of taken this step back to saying, actually, we see email as a social channel, which is slightly controversial. But the idea that if we send out an email campaign, people should be able to respond directly to that. And we know from the emails that we're sending out with the marketing download, actually that works really well. You get really good response rates. And Kieran's been talking about all these different ways of improving kind of deliverability. So we wanted to explore that a little bit.
Yeah, so engaged audiences are key to email, aren't they?
Definitely. Look, it's a different landscape. You can't just build huge lists. You know, everybody loves a graph that does that. That just goes up diagonally in the right direction. And I think we've all got to get with the program. The landscape has changed. That actually doesn't necessarily help you. In fact, it can shoot you in the foot, right? And what I mean by that is if a lot of your audience aren't engaged, it's going to damage all sorts of really important scores and references that email services use to work out, look, who are the good guys here?
You told me this, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to take this more seriously. And then heard Neil Patel speak, and it really blew my mind because he said, if you're waiting every 3 months or 6 months or 12 months to clean your email list, you've ruined it because you've got loads of people who aren't listening anymore. Every time I send an email, and he's sending emails on a weekly basis, if people aren't responding, I'm taking them off the list if they're not engaging whatsoever. So I'm not sure he's going, maybe to that extent all the time. But the point he was making is I just want a small list that are highly engaged because what that's doing is having an impact on all these algorithms of rules out there that are having an impact.
It's not unlike your Google Ads quality score. You know how Google has this algorithm that works out, okay, if your ads get a lot of clicks and get a lot of engagement, then we're going to show your ads to more people and it's going to cost you less money. Well, email's not unlike that. You don't have one big player controlling all of this. You've got lots of little smaller players. So, things like Gmail, we're obviously doing this, things like Outlook and Hotmail addresses, they've got systems that are doing this. Each individual inbox provider has its own set of rules. But what they're doing is they're scoring you as a sender. Right. And they obviously they've got your domain name they can reference, but they'll also be referenced the individual IP address of the machine that sends out the data. And this is why a lot of email service providers are so protective over what you do and so protective over who you email. So for example, MailChimp accounts, if you send out an email and you get an above average level of complaint, I've seen MailChimp throttle right back down. They say, okay, we're going to limit your sending rate now. And I've seen this happen to e-commerce operators actually, where they've had their e-commerce store set up to send out automated emails when you make purchases. And they, in this particular instance, they were hit by some spam bot traffic that seemed to be deliberately trying to destroy their score. So this bot was, and it was all done. It's brilliant. It was all done after the 18th of December, right? Okay. So they're hoping that the marketing team are out and not looking at the things. And what you could see was happening was there was a load of really spammy email addresses. When we searched for them, they were in all the Russian forums. So there's this email's coming out. Oh, okay, that's not nice. And they'd signed up for the email, and then they'd made lots of deliberate complaints. This is spam. Right, and that was enough to trigger a negative effect, and actually it did. What MailChimp,
someone's paying hackers to do this.
I think so. Because what happened was MailChimp reached out to us. We were using their Mandrill service and said, all your e-commerce emails, we're throttling them back. We're only going to allow you to send 35 an hour. Now that's a disaster in a store that's taking thousands of orders a day, and it led to a big backlog and lots of customer complaints. But it showed me, gosh, no, the level of response you get, the feedback that your users are giving is so important to email service providers. Okay. And it's also really important to the inbox inspectors for things like Gmail and Outlook. They're measuring and they're scoring us on, and we need to have good scores. So you're only really as good as your engagement level says you are. Now, the complex thing about this is you've got lots of different lots of different systems using slightly different recipes, slightly different rules for this. And so actually we need to take a step back from the detail on that and just say, look, we need to make sure that we're only emailing people who really want to get the email. If you've got 60, 70% of your list are ignoring your email, that's disaster, because actually it means that it's going to be harder for you to get through to the people that are engaged, because that can sort of pull your score down. So we don't know what, let's say it's a score out of 100. We don't know what that score is, but if you score less than 50 or less than 40, you might then find that far more of your emails go into the other inbox. It's not going to junk, it's going to the other stuff no one ever looks at. Right, because that's what these systems do, and we love it as users. It's like, oh, it's brilliant. All the stuff that I'm not really that fussed with, but I want to still be on the list because they might have a good offer or something, that goes into that other kind of commercial messages stuff. But when you have users who are very, very engaged, so let's say, Louise, you always engage with my emails, that's going to, send back a slightly different score to maybe all the other Hotmail users on thing. Because for you as a specific user, clearly from your previous activity around our emails that we send you, you've always engaged with lots. So that's probably going to egg the fact that it's going to score enough on that score out of 100 to always get directly into the inbox. Yeah. And other things like, you've whitelisted, you've added us as a contact within your email service provider. Okay, that's going to be a big tick in the right thing. Yeah. The main thing though is engagement. What happens when you send things through? And that's the landscape. And so it sounds counterintuitive that you would slash 40, 50, 60% off your email list, but that's absolutely what you've got to do. And you can't just do these one-off culls. You need to be doing this, have automated routines. Yeah, process that does this every week. So, as soon as somebody hasn't engaged with the last 3 emails, okay, maybe you do trigger a little, look, do you still want to get this? We just want to check. And it is quite interesting because of lots of privacy, preventing data flowing back, and lots of privacy settings that are in different email services and different email clients. Very often I'm actually getting those emails from brands that I love the emails from. I had one last week and actually sent me one saying you haven't actually clicked on any of the content. Now those particular emails were written where everything I wanted to read was pretty much in the email. They're really, really great still. I look forward to it coming through, but I wasn't clicking on it. And their little automation then clicked in and said, do you really want the, oh yeah, no, I do. So I clicked it. And they were like, okay, great. So, Kieran carries on getting the email stream. But that's the sort of thing you need to be aware of.
But just before we move on, the biggest mistake I see with this, and I've been guilty of myself, is you build an email list and you're doing pretty well with it for a while. And then you get a bit lazy or distracted and you don't send anything to that list for ages. And then suddenly you send out another email. Half those email addresses have changed. They don't exist anymore. You get huge bounce backs and things like that. And suddenly everyone goes, oh, this is not a trustworthy list. And they stop everyone from getting it. So if you've got a list, value it enough that you're going to keep on communicating. And if you do lapse, use some sort of email list cleaning service to get rid of all the email addresses that don't exist before you start sending them again. Because I think otherwise you can get yourself into trouble.
So how can you go about improving email deliverability? So what are the protocols that you can put in place?
So, I think there are certain things that happen at stage 1, right? So like email marketing 101, like you need to, I think, have double opt-in, like set up. I think that's really good because then the very first email I send you, Louise, oh my gosh, Louise not only opened it, she clicked on it.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, it's
never really
no-brainer, right?
That's quite interesting.
So we start off the relationship by sending a very clear signal to your Gmail or your Outlook with that, and that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, it also ticks a lot of other boxes in terms of email law and what you are and out, and you've clearly got permission with that. But actually, that's the best thing. I think it kind of just cements the relationship. Then I think you're leveraging on your own first party data to really make sure you're segmenting and personalizing, because of course that's going to increase the level of engagement. So actually we need to learn more about our users, and we need to, I think, be quite clever at joining the dots.
But that does rely on you having the systems to do that, right? So that first party, you need some sort of system to track what they're doing in your website.
You've actually got a really good one, and that's with what have they engaged with on previous emails. Actually, if you segment that data, you can filter that, right? So I'm not sold on the fact you have to have a really expensive CRM system. I mean, don't get me wrong, they really help. If you've got HubSpot or Salesforce, that's awesome.
Even the free version will do quite a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. But actually, any email service provider, you've got a lot of data on who's been interested in what. You might even design that into maybe a warm-up sequence. And this is the thing. I think we all know that the more fields we put into our sign-up forms, the lower the conversion rate. So we tend to put minimal stuff in, but that doesn't mean you can't ask for additional info. you know, and it can be quite conversational. And hey, when you do that, you get more engagement. So I think like playing around with things like that. And then the massive learning for us was be more social. You know, ask those questions you put into the. You want to say a bit about that, Daniel?
Well, two things. So we did the marketing download. So by the way, if you want to sign up, there's targetinternet.com/newsletter. And the promise was every episode, 3 tools, tips, or techniques. So things that we thought were useful. Some of them will be ours, some will be other people's. But there will be no sales or ads in that email at all. Now, clearly, if you get to the website, there might be some stuff for sale. But, you know, there's no sales in the email itself. But also, if you hit reply, it comes to my inbox. Massive double-edged sword with this as well. Because, yes, great, I get to engage, but also get a lot of emails. But actually, I suddenly thought, this is taking me hours to deal with. Yeah, but it's our customers and our potential customers speaking directly to us. So then what I started doing is at the top paragraph says, this is what we've been up to. And then the bottom paragraph between these 3 tools was, I've got a question. I get, I don't know, like 16% of people, the whole email list, have actually go, oh yeah, and they answer it, or they comment on what we've been up to. So you get this really personal relationship building up. And I was amazed recently. So we sent out a newsletter and said, we're doing some usability testing. Will you give up 45 minutes of your time to do some usability testing? And we'll give you some free time on the platform. And we got dozens of people responding. So what I have to do is actually go back to a lot of people and say, I'm really sorry, we've filled up spaces. I had no idea we'd get this level of response. Average open rates are 21, 22%. Average click-through rates are 2 or 3%. This thing gets 40+% open rate in some cases. And it always gets above 20 or 30% click-through rate. But you look at it, there's nothing. I mean, the design's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Louise, you're looking at the analytics. Have you noticed the difference? Have there been any key learnings for you on, like, has it given you any additional insights into stuff that we might do?
Yeah, but it goes back to that whole, I mean, you say a lot about doing things for your customer, not to your customer. And that question at the end, the whole conversation starter, that's what you want, isn't it? It's the way of speaking directly to your customers. Why would you not want that?
Yeah, I think it means you're not broadcasting at people, you're having a conversation.
Yeah.
And actually, if we go back to other episodes, we talked about the importance of trust, we talked about the importance of brand. It reinforces all of those things
and
as
I think
well.
when you think back to, when you look at social media and you think how often social media changes, and, you know, you put stuff out on social media, and if you get a really large following on there and you rely on it a lot, can change at any time. Whereas now you're going directly to your customers and no one can interrupt that for you.
And it's so crucial. Like, you own your social media audience. You do not own your Twitter audience.
You mean your email audience?
You do not own your Facebook audience.
No, not at all.
You don't own any of those social media platforms.
But you do own the email audience.
You do own your email audience. And that's what it's your own kind of first-party community, isn't it? It's your own first-party data. And actually just tuning into that, just hooking into that and doing more for them, you'll get a ton more out of it. Now, there are also, in addition to those things that everybody can do, there are some more technical things that you can get set up. And I'd say, like, you're probably going to need some help doing this. They are fairly technical.
I mean, I did ours once I'd learned how to do it, but the risk was I could also absolutely break things.
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right. You need someone who knows what they're doing with these as well.
So let's go through those, and I kind of talk you through it. I think you need to know they exist. You need to have a loose understanding of what they do, and then you can get your teams to help, like, get them set up. And there are a whole series of kind of protocols, I suppose, that just help you rise above the noise and show that you're doing things properly and you're a legitimate brand.
Well, that's it. It's proving it's legitimate. It's the proving the source, right?
So there are 3 things I'm going to go through, and they all kind of interact with one another. So don't think of them as separate things. They're kind of different bricks to the wall, if you like. So the first one is something called SPF, which stands for Sender Policy Framework. And what does that do? Well, it helps when you send an email, it helps to prevent spoofed messages. So, you know, it's possible with email for me to intercept your email communications and change it. So I might change the addresses that you're linking through to. Right. And this is the sort of typical thing when, I mean, banks live in constant fear of this. You know, if your bank was to write to you and say, yeah, just follow this link and log in, they would never do that, right? But if they did, that would be a real opportunity for spoofers, because what they can do is put their own link, take you through to, you know, a phishing website that looks identical, and then what do? You log in. Oh, we've now got your username and password, and that's why banks have gone out of the way to have lots of other systems that, you know, aren't gonna have that. So even if you do put it in, it'll be certain characters of a certain known passphrase. So get SPF set up. It's not too complicated. You're basically putting a file on your DNS, your domain name server, that proves that the email when it goes out is coming from you.
Right.
The next part in this kind of trinity is DKIM. Right. So DKIM stands for Domain Keys Identified Mail. And I guess the way to explain this, it kind of checks that no third party at all has tampered with it. Right, so the SPF makes like spoofing the message and using someone else's domain to send emails to make it look like they've come from them. Makes that harder.
Right.
With DKIM, what we're doing is we're making sure that email hasn't been tampered with. Right, and
I like your analogy for this.
Yeah, so it's kind of like putting a wax seal on your message.
Right.
So like you would know if my letter that I'd sent to you if it had a wax seal. Yeah, but interestingly, it doesn't tell you that. It tells the receiving machine that. Right, so let's say you've got Gmail. Gmail's going to know, yeah, this definitely came from them and it wasn't interfered with because the DKIM part's still intact. It still like adds up. Right, so it's including an element that anybody else wouldn't possibly know, right? Couldn't possibly calculate. And then the third part that sort of pulls these two other pieces together is called DMARC. Now, what DMARC does, it stands for Domain-Based Message Authentication Report Conformance.
Rolls off the tongue.
I honestly, like these things. I'm looking at my screen, like checking that I've got the right names for these things. But what that does is it says, look, if either SPF or DKIM fail, what do you do, right? And it's giving an instruction to the machine at the other end. And you can give it like three choices. I can reject it, in which case your email server's going to put it straight into trash. Like it's never even going to get through to you. I could do nothing. Right, well, why would you want to do that? Well, actually, when you're setting this up, it's quite helpful to just check you've got things working. Because
otherwise you get no emails.
Or I can quarantine it. Now, if you quarantine it, what happens is a message gets sent back to a nominated email address whenever you do a send, telling you anybody that like any messages that have failed this, and that can be super useful because you can go through those and just check why. Was it from us? Is it coming from some other place? And those three things just really work together. And why get them set up? I think they just make you look a lot more legitimate. You know, in here, I suppose I sort of bow down to what I call the inbox gods. You
have to do this.
You have to, and these gods are kind of like the social media algorithm that decides what goes where in the feed. This is deciding which email gets through and gets looked at, and it's a big tick in the box if you've got these all set up correctly. The danger is if you make any mistakes or missteps, or even like a comma out of place when you're setting this all up, it'll fail.
I may have done that.
Lots of genuine email address just gets rejected. So something like Gmail, for example, rejects millions of messages every day because the SPF or DKIM checks fail.
So let me clarify this. I set the DKIM up wrong because it's a bit more complicated to set up. You can't just put this bit of text in the DNS record. You have to use a tool to set out for your server and put it in. And I set DMARC up at the same time. I thought, I'm really clever. I can do really technical stuff. And I didn't realize I was getting DMARC reports going, no, nothing's getting through. It's all not working. It's not working. And then eventually I went, well, that's the point of a DMARC report. I now understand. So so it is a problem. What I could have done with is some tools that would have helped with this. So I think, Louise, you've got a list of tools that Kieran's kind of identified for us.
Yeah. So Redshift,
redshift.com. If you go to their /tools/investigate. They've got a brilliant tool.
We'll put these into the show notes, by the way. So targetinternet.com /podcast.
We will. So what I like about this tool, a lot of the DKIM, SPF, DMARC tools, what they do is they ask you for your DKIM selector. And so, wait, what's that? How do I get that? And it'll be embedded in the file that you upload when you set your DKIM. But let's not go into that. Like, let's just use Redshift. It's a free tool. And all you do is you give it your domain name. Right, so for us it'd be targetinternet.com, and what I can do is I can run a test on that, and it'll tell me whether it passes. And if it fails, it gives me little insights into what the problem is and what we might need to fix. So really, really great tool. Yeah.
And then use Bouncer as well.
Yeah, use Bouncer. They've got a couple of things. So they've got a whole bunch of like deliverability checks that they can check for you. But I really liked their toxicity check. Right. So what this does is it looks at, you can give it your list, and there's an element of trust here because you're going to have to upload that and share it with them. But they're a really respected company and used by thousands of brands across the world. And what they'll do is they'll search your list for widely circulated or breached email addresses. and they'll highlight them. Like if you've got a high percentage of those, they'll highlight. They'll also check for any known spam trap emails.
Oh, that are trying to collect your information.
Well, that's the next question. What's a spam trap email, right? So if let's say I'm Gmail or I'm Hotmail or I'm Outlook, what I might do is I've got a massive problem with spam emails. Like and actually, if all that spam email got through, email would be unusable.
Right.
We're talking about billions of messages every year.
And it's going to slow their servers down and cost them money in terms of storage.
Just to deal with it all, right? So what they do is quite clever. They'll create some email addresses that no one has ever used, right? So unique email address, and they'll just leave them on various websites. They'll put them in comments, or they'll put them and wait for the spammers to harvest them with email harvesting technology.
Sneaky, clever.
Yeah. Now, if you get caught emailing one of those email addresses, you're ad, and you probably go straight onto the backlist.
Yeah.
But wait a minute. I could go and scrape these off onto someone else's website, go to my competitor, sign up to their email list.
Yes.
And if they're not using double opt-in, which is another reason to use double opt-in,
Yes.
I could make my competitor's email list look really dodgy.
Yeah, you could. And I think that's
Good
where it
thinking,
gets-
making a note.
Yeah. What you won't get from anybody very easily is what are these known spam
course,
email addresses. They're kept quite secret, but you
course.
get caught. But this is why, like, a couple of things. If you really want belt and braces, there are APIs that you can hook up. So when you collect email addresses, you can reference this and highlight or quarantine problem email addresses when they come through. I think that's quite a clever approach to it. But I think also, within that, you don't want to buy lists. Like, because any one of those lists that you buy, like, just don't buy them. People
still
go,
get
but
it
it's
now.
a legitimate list, or it's come from legitimate NHS providers. I've had that. Yeah, I don't care. It's not worth the risk.
Yeah.
Because you've only got some salesperson.
I just can't believe this is a thing anymore.
No, it is. People are still doing it, especially in B2B. It's like, oh, well, that's okay. No, not really. Be really careful. Because
My mind is blown.
yeah, no, but it does. And what happens is you get caught. Now your domain and your email server
Nothing's
are
going to get
blacklisted.
delivered properly.
You're just going to create yourself no end of trouble. And now you've not got access to one of the most lucrative and useful tools in the marketer's bag. So don't buy lists. Yeah, it's a thing.
Lemwarm as well by Lemlist.
Yeah, Daniel, this is one you found.
I just thought this was nice. This is allowing you to warm up the trust in your email list. So rather than bombarding out a ton of emails at once, it will slow it down for you at the right pace. It will do some of the checking stuff that you spoke about as well. And it integrates with other tools really nicely as well. So I remember, like, when we've had really big clients that have got these massive lists, you don't want to stop for a while and then suddenly start bombarding lists like I was speaking about earlier on. So actually this will do it gradually, build up trust, check the quality of the emails that are going out, see what the response in the DMARC is, and then make sure everything's kind of working properly, and then gradually just increase the pace if you've got that email it's kind of to send out. So yeah, it's a great tool for that.
Also, can you talk a little bit, because we've got it noted here, about Bimmy? Because
Bimmy,
that's
yes.
a nice one in terms of like
Yes.
visual authentication and branding.
Yes,
and
yes. So I've never set this up, so I wasn't going to talk about it, but I can tell you what it is, and I've thought about setting it up. So it's a way of tying your logo that you include with your domain, and so only the legitimate logo could be used within your emails. So
we
it's
have
kind
a
of
blog post on this as well that we can.
it's kind of an additional thing that you can do. And I think for a big brand, that's quite cool. Like, you can prevent anybody else from using it. Or if they did, it's going to mean their email is less likely to get through, because it doesn't, like, if that's set up,
Yeah.
any receiving server's going to know, oh, maybe
Because
this
it's
is
not
a fake email.
It's not just the logo itself, it's the size of the logo and all sorts of other things that go with it. So it does some quite clever things tying it in from that point of view as well. We have got a guide to all of this stuff online as well, written guide, because you're probably going to go for it step by step. So we'll put that in the show notes as well.
There's guides to SPF, DKIM,
Yeah, exactly.
DMARC, and Bimmy. So
Yeah, they're all in there as well. One last tool, though, which I think is really important, was the MX Toolbox stuff as well. So
MX Toolbox is the best, I think. Like, it's what they give you for free is so useful. And again,
it's not just for email either, this one.
No.
It's on DNS checks and blacklist checks and all sorts of
it does
things.
a ton of stuff. It's great if you suspect you've been blacklisted. Suddenly you find a big drop in email performance. Like, this is the first place I go. Is let's double
It's quick,
check.
is it easy to use
Yeah,
as well?
let's double check. And again, you give it your settings, you give it your mail service or your domain name that you're using for your email, and it will just like spider through. I think they check against like over 90 different blacklists.
Yeah.
One thing with blacklists, if you get on, this is something you taught me, Daniel, if you get on one, you get on all of them really quickly.
Yeah, I managed that myself as well. I'm great. I'm giving you all these things. So we managed to do something that we got an email account hacked but things they started sending out spoofed emails. We appeared on one blacklist, and within a week we're on all of them as well. And you have to contact them all individually. And there were some services we used to do that, but it creates massive distrust. And it took us, I reckon, a year to recover from it, really. So that's when I went and set up DMARC and all those kind of things as well. Loads of really good tools in there. Loads of written. We've got some really in-depth guides in this, completely free on there as well. So targetinternet.com/podcast. Do not underestimate the power of email still. I always say as well, look at the response rates you get from social media. Look at the response rates you get from email. It's normally always off the chart better, but we just don't use it. It feels old-fashioned. It's because you're doing it wrong. So if you get it right, it can work really effectively, but there's some factors to think about. Thank you for listening to Digital Marketing Podcast. We'll see you again soon. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Kieran. And check out targetinternet.com/podcast and YouTube.com/targetinternet.
Please subscribe for more videos like this and visit targetinternet.com for more free digital marketing resources.